Hi, welcome back to another episode of Geekified. This is a slightly different episode. You've seen us do the podcast in these beautiful studios, podcast studios, Glasgow. And for the first time in the studio, we're actually having a special guest. So normally we talk about absolutely everything and anything. We absolutely talk about anything to do with TV, anything to do with film, anything at all that you can geek out about. And we have obviously done some interviews in the past as well, but we're going to start bringing more people in and just chatting about really, really geeky stuff. And it's like we did an episode called Geekified Insider, and this is fundamentally the same thing, except in the studio. And our special guest today is Martin McCardie. Hi.
Hi, thanks very much. Thanks for inviting me along.
Yeah, welcome indeed. So, if you don't know who Martin McCardie is, Martin McCardie has had quite an interesting career. I literally got a list of all the stuff, going from actor and all the way up to into production now. And the most thing you'll probably pick up for what he's currently doing just now is the one and only River City. He is the executive producer.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, executive producer of River City, an absolutely amazing show that's been on our TV for quite some amount of time. And we're going to get quite into River City later on. We're going to talk about just a lot of different things. We're going to talk about your career in general, if that's all right.
Sure, of course.
Hi Ryan, how are you? Sorry, I don't want to keep talking.
No, it's all good. I'm just happy to be here, Martin, and find out what we can do. Can I pick your brain a little bit, man, about all the things, especially very interested in the kind of producing side of things, do you know what I mean? And also from the transition from actor to producer and all. Then I've got a few questions about River City, doing a wee bit of research, like a few interesting things we can bring into the geeky side of things with River City. So we'll get on that. But yeah, if you want to continue on, man.
Yeah. So it's a right interesting jump to go from acting. So obviously you started as an actor. Was that the first thing you did in the field?
Yeah, I when I was 18, which is a while ago now, I went down to London. I got picked me and my brother both got picked for the National Youth Theatre. And when I went down there, I got the part of Macbeth and didn't understand what I was saying, but the right accent, I think. But and that was the first thing. That was like when I hadn't really been interested in it before that. I'd done one play, Godspell, at the end of school, which I enjoyed, and it was through that then I went down to the National Youth Theatre, and very quickly what happened was Paul Higgins, who's a Scottish actor, Neil McKinnon, Frank Gallagher, who's in River City, the four of us shared a flat in Cumbernauld when we were 18, 19, and were involved in a thing called the On Your Bike group, which was for unemployed teenagers to try and teach them about writing and acting and all that. And within a year of that, I was at drama school in London. It was all very quick. And I trained, the course I did was an acting course, but also you got to write your own play in a third year, like a one-act play. And I knew I wanted to write, even though I'd never written anything. I just had a feeling that I wanted to do it. And that was something I really enjoyed. After that, when I left, I was still living in London, but a lot of my work was up here. So I moved back up and was acting mostly for about 7 or 8 years, but talking about that play that I'd done the first act of. My girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, was like, see if you talk about that anymore, right? And she literally, I'm not joking, my wife's Maureen Carr, who's an actress, she's in Still Game, she's the one that does Pint of Guinness. So I've got well, if you, so that was enough to scare me into it. So I basically went away to a library, wrote it all by hand, and wrote a play. And at that time, then acting and writing sort of combined, and that was the beginning of that. But I mean, I really did enjoy acting for the first few years. But I think what happens is you sort of get cast in the same parts, and it's your living as well. So it changes. It's not like a hobby anymore. It's how you make your living. It totally changes how you think about it. So what I wanted to do was create my own work, and we had a company called Wise Guys, which was 4 actors, and it was all new work. So it had to be new plays that had never been done before. Then we moved into short films as well, and that was really the beginning of when I started producing and stuff like that. With Wise Guys.
Yeah. I had a wee flashback there, like, I can't remember who it was, Samuel L. Jackson I can't remember who the other people were, but there's a famous story in Hollywood about the 4 actors that shared a flat. I just had it was like the Scottish version of it. It was like Samuel L. Jackson, Al Pacino, Ray Liotta. Like, it was something along those lines. And just when you said that, it's like you're all sharing a flat together. It was like
No, I've always loved that kind of idea, because I had something similar to it before, but nothing yourself, nothing as big, but just with do you know what I mean, similar characters and stuff being about, and you've got that kind of camaraderie. You're living in the same house, you're doing the same thing, going for auditions, all that kind of thing. It's a really nice thing, especially when you're like, you know, it's early 20s, mid 20s, that kind of thing. It can be really fun and spawn some really good stories. I'm sure. I'm sure you'll get some, not the detail here, but no, I really like that. What you were saying as well, just how you done. Was it Macbeth? You said it was Macbeth, and how when you went back into, when you went into acting. The Shakespeare of it, you didn't really understand and stuff like that. Because I get that very much. I'd done acting at a very young age, left it for years thinking, do you know what I mean, growing up in Paisley in Scotland, do you know what I mean, thinking I'm not doing acting. So when I was about 19, 20-ish is when I went back into acting, and I had the exact same thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, trying to read Shakespeare was like another language. Do you know what I mean? It was, what the hell is this, man? But I was just wondering your kind of experience with that. Like, see, when you did get into it and did get, how did you, because for myself I found that it went for something that I was like, this is nonsense, to something that really clicked with me. Do you know what I mean? Then I felt, am I being like pretentious now? because of how much I really, really liked it. And the kind of the grandiose kind of way that Shakespeare can get things across and stuff, I just thought was badass as hell. So I was just wondering your own kind of experience of that, for going for someone at like 18 who's like, nah, that, do you know what I mean? What is this kind of stuff, to then someone who's obviously very, involved with the arts that way and stuff?
Well, when I went down to the college I went to, is a college called Rose Bruford. It's a kind of really reputable place, and so at that time, the course I did, you could do a degree in acting. You couldn't do that in Scotland. You could do a degree in acting / teaching, but you couldn't do it just in acting. So what they had was a massive library with hundreds of different things in it. When I arrived, and there was only 2 years with accents in my year. Right, there was me and a Scouser, and I had chips in both shoulders when I went down there. Yeah. I mean, I really did. I was like, Big Ben, it's not that big. I was literally chips in every shoulder. A Scotsman down there like that. I don't think London's that good. And
I'm still kind of like that.
It's overrated. No offence, sorry.
But I didn't have a knowledge of Shakespeare or classics like most of the other people. In fact, all of them. In the year they had, because they'd been interested in it all their lives, and so I was really behind in a lot of those areas. And in the first maybe 2 or 3 months, I was sort of thinking of chucking it. The only reason I didn't was my dad had told me I would chuck it, because he was like saying, you shouldn't go because you'll chuck it. So I was like, all right, I'll better not chuck it then. And so just wanted to prove my dad wrong, who's a great guy, by the way, but he just thought acting, what do you mean acting? So that's what made me stick out. It was pure bloody mindedness of it. Didn't want my dad to be proven right that I didn't have it to stay on. And so I thought then, well, I may as well start educating myself with reading plays and looking at stuff, and Shakespeare being a big part of that. And I forced myself to do it, and I didn't like it to begin with. And then Robbie Jarvis, who's an actor, who's a scout, the Scouser, the other accent person, he was really good at it. So he started and went through some of the stuff with me, and I started reading it in a different way. And then I realised when they were asking me to lose my accent for things, it wasn't a political attack on everything about me. It was actually them trying to just say there's other skills that you can learn, and if you're talking in a kind of standard English accent, it's not a political statement. So that started to help a wee bit, and I realised, like the women in the canteen at Rose Bruford, if I went in and spoke in an English accent, they would go, just please stop that. We like your real accent. And I was like, I should have, but they're telling me to do that. And but then it meant that you could do a variety of different accents and believe it, and read plays in a way that I hadn't been able to do before. I mean, what I was really interested in was like John McGrath, 1784, Scottish political theatre of that time. That's what interested me. And I mean, when I auditioned for Rose Bruford, I knew nothing. Like the classic speech I did was, was Othello, me as Othello, the Black Moor. I didn't even know he was black, right? So, I mean, I had no idea. So they were like, no, they were probably not. No, but I mean, I didn't know. So it was a sheer innocence. But the panel were like, so that's an interesting choice. You've chosen to play the Black Moor. And I went, I see the Scots as the black men of Europe and all this. I just made it all up as I was going along and trying to get away with it. And actually, my modern speech was a speech about boxing from a non-existent play. I wrote it myself and said it was a play that was in Cumbernauld Theatre because I thought, I'll not know that. But the clever bit about it was I wrote something I thought would suit me. Yeah. And it obviously did because I got in. But I made up the play. It wasn't a real play. So it was a total chancer.
Relate with that kind of thing very much. I may have not done something quite similar before and just wrote something. Oh no, this is totally for a play. This Bride. You'll never have seen it. Do you know what I mean?
And you find every actor has lied about it.
Yeah, well, don't tell me about it, horse riding. Don't ever lie about that.
No, that's
a dangerous thing to lie about.
I actually got to the point where I don't drive. I still don't drive. I'm 41 years old. It's shocking. I still should. And I got to the point of literally standing outside an Audi with a director and going, right, you're going to get in, you're going to drive. You're like, but somebody lost the keys. It's literally in the middle of somewhere I can't remember where it was in Glasgow, and I was only like I was 22, 23 when I was doing it, and I just stood there and I was like, I don't fucking know how to
Is this an automatic?
I'm looking in going, right, steering wheel, there's a shaft, there's like please, and the guy went, who's got the keys for the car? Nobody had the keys for the car. I was like, right, it's alright, we're just going to leave this bit out. I was like, yes.
I remember for a part on, it was a BBC thing, I think, I basically lied that I could do a Welsh accent, and I was like, the night before, I'm just going to learn this fucking Welsh accent. But then the next day, like, alright, mate.
That's a hard accent.
Yeah, no, it was. And the thing is, I thought I'd mastered it because when you're kind of doing it over and over, I was like, oh, I've got it. Then, travelling through, get the next day by plane, I was like, oh, it's gone. It's gone.
I've always imagined the lead singer of Stereophonics saying Stereophonics.
Yeah.
Stereophonic. That's it. I was like, that's it. I've got it. It's in my head. It's done. Absolutely done.
No, but the other thing you were saying there, Martin, I relate with it, kind of tying back to what I was saying, but the thing of going with, being a bit of a fish out of water, get it there at first being like, all these people like have a wealth of knowledge about plays and playwrights and all this kind of thing, and because that is also just a very similar position I found myself in a couple of times, getting back into the kind of acting thing and people being like, spouting all these different, and you're like, I don't know. So for like my audition, come back to like a college course, I did an American Psycho because I didn't have any knowledge of any plays, so I was like, I'm going to do this, and kind of went all right. But no, I really kind of relate with that, with the kind of idea of just being around so many people with all this theatre knowledge and that, and being like, oh God, I'm going to really need to learn. Learn about plays.
It's a different, like, I'm 60 soon, right? So it's in a couple of weeks. And it's at that time when I went down there, it seems weird to say it, but like pre-mobile phones, like I used to phone once a week for a phone box up to my mum and dad and family and that, and say, oh, hi, everyone's all right, I'm not dead or anything. So going to London was like going to New York or something. It was like you thought you were going extremely far away. And my youngest sister, who's 15 years younger than me, she'd be like, oh, don't go. Every time I'd be on that train like that all the way down, greeting and all that, like, oh, I can't believe I've got to go down and do Shakespeare or Arnold Wesker or whoever it's going to be. But it's just, it feels like a different world from now, where everything seems like it's quick. I mean, you can do things on Zoom, you can audition, you can do self-tapes, you can audition for anything in the world now. Yeah. But it was completely different then in that whole process.
How do you find that yourself, even just being someone who's more kind of behind the process now and stuff, with the more auditions going towards things like Zoom and stuff like that? Because myself as an actor from doing auditions, I don't know how you feel, Chris, but I don't like it. I would much rather be in front of somebody and stuff and be able to kind of audition properly. I find that I get how it works. I get how it can streamline things, but I do find it quite, I don't know, limited in a sense. But I'm just more interested in what you...
I totally understand that point of view, and I think sometimes when you're the actor in that situation, that's the way you would view it. What I would think is that because of Zoom and because of, or not Zoom really, because of self-tapes, there's opportunity for people who would never get in the room at that point, because in a way, casting directors will go by people they've worked with before or people they've recently seen their work. So very, very few new people get a chance that way. But recently, for us, we've seen people who the casting director didn't know just by having like them do the self-tape. Now, those people ended up not getting the part, but they got in the room. Yeah. So even doing that in stages, they never got the part, but they did well. They're on the radar. So I think there's good and bad in it. I prefer to be in the room with people. Yeah. I think you get a better sense of who they are and all that. But I also think what it's done is open it up in a way where maybe people didn't think they were going to get an opportunity could. My son's an actor. He graduated a year ago from the conservatoire, and he's doing self-tapes all the time, but he's auditioning for things, some of them in America, some of them in London, and it's a good process to learn. There's no replacement for being in the room with somebody and then getting to know them, definitely, but as a door opener, and also as something where sometimes for a part there can be like 200 people are sent forward for it. In terms of self-tapes, you can quickly tell who is and who isn't right for that part. Yeah. And that cuts it down, so you're able to do that process. So there's pros and cons with it.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, no, I suppose it does do that, open a bit more doors to people. I hadn't really thought about it that way. Well, I suppose I have, but yeah, it is just the kind of, as you said there, I've always felt more the kind of, how do I put it, the energy kind of thing, without trying to sound like a wee pretentious asshole.
No, I get that.
Sorry, he's a pretentious asshole.
I spent all day auditioning yesterday it wasn't for River City, it was for a theatre thing with a panel of 3 or 4, and there was great energy in the room. We were doing it all day, there was people coming in, and I left really thinking the standard of actor in Scotland is so high. There's so many really good people that I was like, we're casting for 7 parts, and I was like, we could fill them 100 times over.
Yeah. I think that's something that River City really has to be applauded for, is, it does offer, there's a wealth there of work that it does give for Scottish actors and stuff to be able to get, because I think I've seen myself with the casting agency I've ran, even just actors I've known and myself, and there is so many really good Scottish actors out there, and there's not enough you see on screen. Do you know what I mean? I really feel even so many times when something will go out to something that could easily be for Scottish, or sometimes is meant for Scottish, and it's like, the old age thing that we've always complained about as Scots, but some days English gets it. Do you know what I mean? And it's like,
I can actually bring that up. We just watched Netflix episode 2, Loch Henry. We were just discussing it just before you arrived, and it's an English actor that plays him. I've always questioned whether or not, is it just me or other people who are like Scottish when they hear someone do the accent, or does everybody around realise that accent's a bit scouse, if you know what I mean? Like, because his accent, it wasn't very good. Like, I don't want to lambast the guy and say, but I think it's just
Scottish accent,
because you're from Glasgow, like you hear it and you're like,
I think Scottish accent's one of those ones that's really difficult to nail, and I think people don't realise, because of the different dialects and stuff about different, North or Glasgow and stuff, just how, but I do think it can go on deaf ears to Americans, because I've got some American friends and stuff that, still think I'm Welsh or Irish or something sometimes, do you know what I mean? And so I do think it can, but more about the actual, the part going to somebody that could do it justice for Scottish ears and all that. I don't know. We do see it a lot. I mean, what about yourself, Martin?
I think a lot of it depends on the actor. Like, say take someone that's doing really well just now, like Jack Lowden. Jack Lowden's Scottish accent, in gold. He's got an English accent, and he's very believable in the part. So it does work both ways. I think what happens is, for us in Scotland, if something's coming to Scotland to be made in Scotland, your automatic thought is, well, why don't you cast it in Scotland? Yeah. And that depends on the casting director. It depends on the profile of the actor. A lot of the times if you're a regular actor in River City, for example, and there's some really good actors in River City, but if there's another drama that's happening and it's getting filmed at the moment, River City's not shooting, sometimes they won't take those actors, not because they're looking down on them, but because the night that programme comes out, River City could be on at 8 o'clock, and then at 9 o'clock that could be on. And then the audience are going, well, that's the same guy, and he was in that, and he was in that.
Yeah.
So so sometimes it's a tactical thing that they'll go. It's not necessarily that they're looking down in the programme or any of that. It's just they're looking like, well, when's this programme going to be out, and is that going to look like the same actor? And I think, sometimes it's just casting agents will go through a process. If they're not from a place, they don't know the accent's not that great. I think for me, it puts me off because you come from the place, but internationally it probably doesn't. If there's, it depends on what your audience is. If we were to get someone in River City who was an actor from, say, like Wales, who was trying a Scottish accent and it wasn't working, why would we do that? That would be crazy. Because there's Scottish actors, and what we try to do is mostly cast in Scotland. We go Scottish-based first and then look out after that, because there's so many people in Scotland who are good, and that we don't find a reason to do that. But in terms of other productions, if you were London-based as a casting agent, what's the likelihood you'll know the Scottish-based actors that well? Our casting agent for River City is based in Scotland, and he knows the people, although he does, UK and Europe-wide stuff, and he's very good, and he's a former actor himself, and he gets it. But not all of them are like that. So some of them can be not have a clue about any of that, and it depends on what the director of the piece is looking for. I mean, I saw a big lesson for me as an actor was when I first went to the bad side, over to the production side. I first did that in the 90s and then went back again. But in the 90s, I was helping to cast a film, and I was working in the BBC as a script editor. And at that time, they let you do various other things, and I was helping to cast a film. The director of the film had me across from everybody that came into the room, and this actor walked in nervous, did a terrible audition, honestly, like forgot all his words, and he was all over the place. Then he walked out the room, and the director said, "That's a guy." And I was like, what? So then I waited till the end of the day, and he said, "That's who I'm going to cast." And I said, "Why are you casting that guy? He didn't know any of his lines. He was all over the place." He went, "Did you see the way he walked in the room? That's the way the character walks." That's what the director said. He said, "I can teach him how to act on that. Nobody else walked in with that gallus walk that he's got." And so for the first time then I thought, all right, it's not all just about acting. It's about how you look, it's how you present yourself, it's how you walk in a door sometimes. And I mean, that actor was very good in the film, so the director was right. But that just made me then suddenly realise, all right, it's not how I think it is. And sometimes I would think, oh, that's unfair. Why is that guy getting a chance when I'm not on this? And it might be that guy's got the look that the directors had in their head all along, or because they're thinking in a visual way. Sometimes, and so it's a different way of thinking.
Well, that's really interesting. I do like that kind of side of things. I mean, it can come off sometimes unfair, but it is nice to see when somebody's got a vision in their head and it just kind of just fits. Do you know what I mean? They can just explain, you might not be able to see this because I've got this vision, but I promise you it's going to work, kind of thing. And then it does.
So those directors, those type of directors, the ones that come from like maybe an art background and an artistic background, who they see the preparation they do and what they draw everything they're going to do. I mean, they're almost like beautiful paintings. You look at every scene has been done to such a degree, and that particular director drew loads of stuff that I was like, you could probably sell that down a barras and get quite a bit of money.
You see a lot of that now, don't you? From like some like classic films, like Star Wars and Aliens. You find some of the drawings that some of the guys have done. That's because I think most of the famous memorabilia is all gone. It's usually owned, just changing hands. But you're still finding some of the pieces that maybe the director's done notes on, or a bit of a script. So you still find bits and bobs like that.
That'd be really cool, especially from Aliens or.
I love that.
Geiger, some Geiger stuff.
Anyone's selling that shit.
Some HR Geiger stuff.
Go back a little bit in your early career. We'll talk a wee bit about Tinseltown.
Oh, I was going to bring it.
Yep. Sorry, Mr.
No, you go.
It's mine now. Tinseltown. It's a very memorable show for me. I can remember it back in the day. But you were the creator of it.
Yeah.
Was it just yourself that did it, or did you have someone else involved?
It was Rain Dog. It was Robbie Allen and Stuart David. Stuart still works with me at River City. The three of us were the three that kind of did it. when I talked about the theatre company that I ran, was Wise Guys and Rain Dog were rivals. And Rain Dog were Bobby Carlyle, Caroline Patterson. They were a really good company, and they started moving into film and telly as well. And after I went to the BBC the first time and I worked as a script editor, I left because I wanted to write, and you couldn't do that at the time. They wouldn't let you do both. And so I left. They did a sort of beginning pilot of something, like a 5-minute trailer of something that they wanted to do. There was like a Tinseltown type idea that they sent to me, and I saw, and I went and met them with another actor and spoke to him about the possibility of me writing for it. It turned out later I found out they'd been warned off me because I was difficult. And I think, that might be true at that time. But I met them, and then what we agreed to do was just to see how it went. So what we had was a wee drop of money to get some actors in a room, improvise with them, just see if an idea came up. So I wrote a sort of trailer 15-minute thing from that, which we shot and presented to the BBC, and then he gave us money to do a sort of pilot with more money, and it could have bigger production values, and we could get the actors in for another couple of weeks and just work with them. That was the best process I've ever had, as a writer or an actor. Was working in the room, creating characters, everybody in it together. It was a great experience. And then
amazing, yeah.
It was amazing. Really cool. It was really cool. And then we then got more money to do a further development process with it. We had a trailer pilot type thing. We were called to Edinburgh, and at the Edinburgh Film and Television Festival, it was like nerve-wracking. There was a bunch of producers, people from the BBC went through to watch what we had through in another room, discussed the episode that I had written, and then they came back through and said, we're going to commission you for the series. And we want it by whatever time. We were like that. All right. We're all euphoric, but then I was like, who am I going to do that?
It must be an amazing feeling, that though, just that bit where it kind of drops to say we're going to commission you, we've got it, you know what I mean, that's it. And as you said there, then the fear.
I've always said this because I remember Tinseltown when I was younger, like, because I didn't actually write it. The first
series was 1999, the second series was 2000, 2001.
Yeah. I've always said it doesn't get talked about a lot, Tinseltown, and I think it's a shame because there's so many other shows that seem to have followed that show.
Yeah. It was, what was funny about it, I think, was Tinseltown was received much better out of Scotland than it was in Scotland, in terms of press and all that. So myself and my brother, Ed, were both nominated for BAFTAs for Tinseltown down in London. We weren't nominated for anything in Scotland. And in Scotland, it did win things, like we won Best Director. So it won a few awards. My brother won the BAFTA. Not bitter about it, right? I wrote 8 episodes of that first series, and he wrote 2, and he won the BAFTA. I'm over it, honestly. I'm over it. No, I was really delighted, and it's like it was just one of those things where, for in Scotland at that time, for example, there was a headline in the Evening Times saying that a well-known owner of a nightclub in Glasgow said everything about Tinseltown was rubbish. There were no drugs taken in any club in Glasgow. Is what that means. And how dare we say that? And God, so there was quite a lot of that kind of shit, and there was a sort of, I don't know. There was one particular journalist phoned me up one time to ask me how much money I had made on it, and I was like, why ask me that? And he was really, really kind of rude in the interview, so I was rude back, and then, which I learned was not a good tactic. Because
is it not?
No, on your side.
It was in that article. He said I had met my wife by meeting her in a club and shagging her in a toilet, and that was in the first episode. That was in the first episode of Tinseltown, but it's not how I met my wife.
Yeah.
And he did that, in my opinion, deliberately. And what that did was then upset some folk, and I had to go and say, look, none of that's true. But what the big thing for here was, because drugs were in Tinseltown, how they tried to position it here was that I was a spokesman for taking drugs. So that's how it happened in Scotland. So many times I would go into, like, for example, it was a radio show, a BBC Scotland radio programme, where I went on to talk about something else. The second series of Tinseltown was happening, but I had a play on, and I was on talking about that, I'd said I'm not going to talk about the drug side of it, right? Because I keep getting set up that somehow I'm the pro-drugs person, even though you're talking about characters and, you know, if you've got a killer, are you really a killer? You know, it's not, it doesn't make sense. But they tried to ambush me again with 2 people, so I walked off the show. I was like, I'm not doing that. Because it was positioned in a way where I was having to defend drama that we were doing, and you were saying, but you're talking about clubs where this happens, rather than this is my personal preference or my personal whatever. You know,
well, it's an odd thing, man, because you see it with a lot of things. I think it was in the 90s. You know, that kind of anti-drug stance and all that was one of it. But you see it today as well, where it's where, you know, because somebody's written something or done something, it's also that's you and how you feel then. It's like, no, I can write a character, or I can portray a character and not be my feelings. Like,
I'd say that's really quite poignant now. I mean, you've got shows like Euphoria with Zendaya. I mean, that is rife with drugs. I mean, it's literally about her being she's a junkie trying to come off of it. I mean, she's stuck on it. But that's what I'm saying, is like of why I think that show back then was way ahead of its time. This is because it just talked about it, and you didn't.
I think the thing that it sounds really old hat now, but one of the things that was ahead of its time that we were talking about. The Tinseltown club that it was based in was a club where you could go if you were gay, if you were straight, and there was a mixture of where the trouble that would happen would not be about identity, gender identity, sexuality. It wouldn't be about that. You'd have like-minded people that would want to come to who liked the music, come to the same place, and that was ahead of its time in Glasgow. You didn't get that at that point.
Yeah, off the top of my head, you did cover that quite. That was a big story, and I'm literally going flashing back to.
Yeah, there was quite a few contentious stories, I think, and stories that I think worked and were good. But you know, at the same time as that, there's never been a show like that made in Scotland. I don't think since. Or before, and it did ruffle a few feathers. There's no doubt about that.
I'd agree, and the thing is, as well, is you know, when you're dealing with like subject matter as like drugs and people kind of, not everything has to be depression and, you know, them going through it. It can lead to that, it can be things, but you can show there's another film that I used to love, it kind of reminds me of the same kind of vibe as Tinseltown. It's Human Traffic back in the day in 90s, and you know, I remember the first time I watched that and I kept thinking, right, when's somebody going to die or something? Do you know what I mean? And it doesn't happen, and I was all right. And it's not exactly promoting the drugs, it's promoting everything around it. Do you know what I mean? Is you can be out enjoying stuff with your friends, like-minded folk, they're doing this, or breaking down barriers with each other, blah, blah, being open, all this kind of thing. It's not just the drugs, it's kind of thing. Not everything has to be sweet 16. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, or that kind of, especially in Scotland, this is something that I've said to Chris quite a lot, is a lot of things that seem to come out of Scotland, especially revolving around, you know, kind of working class, or it always has to be leaning on the very kind of, and the sad side of things, isn't it? And there's funny and poignant and thick stories in there that aren't just, do you know what I mean, like a PSA, do you know what I mean? So I think that is something that Tinseltown could have brought back then, and it's a shame you got that kind of drive through the courts for it.
But I mean, we didn't really care, because elsewhere it was, I mean, we got massively good reviews everywhere else except here. And in the second series, because we'd won all awards for the first one, the same people who'd done the bad reviews the first time did good ones the second time. It was funny. It was just like, and I kind of don't blame them, because I think it was shocking for them that it was a Scottish thing, and it was that way. And I mean, when I look at some of the stuff in the first series, even now, I kind of go, oh, all right, okay, I can see how that may have ruffled a few feathers.
Do you think, going on about a comment you said, do you think that Scottish productions are a better export, like for other people, rather than in here? Because there's a lot of stuff that gets made here that does so much better than it actually does. And one of them, prime example right now, is Outlander. That's absolutely huge. Everyone else, but do you know, everybody asks, because like, you watch Outlander, and some people go, what? Yeah, I mean, it's like, but a lot of this stuff is majorly successful inside Scotland.
I'll just say that people outside it really do seem to be speaking to a few Americans before, and they're like, Scotland, they're like, Outlander, blah, blah, that's the thing I watch constantly, that's the thing. But yeah, no, you're right.
Do you think that's a big thing?
I think it possibly is for some things. I think there's more things now getting made in Scotland that Scottish. I mean, Still Game. If you think of Still Game, who would have thought that would have been an international success, because it's such a localised subject matter and sense of humour, but obviously it struck a chord all over the world. I mean, and apparently in Netflix, it's done extremely well in Netflix. And, you know, that's, and in a way, it's a clever thing, because the more Scottish you are, the more international it is. Rather than trying to make it less Scottish and appeal more to, say, London, what you're doing is make it more Scottish and you'll appeal to the rest of the world. That's kind of my thinking about it anyway. We've certainly tried to do that a bit more with River City, in terms of a lot of the music that's used is Scottish-based musicians. A lot of the writers we use are Scottish-based, cast are Scottish-based, all the directors we've bought through are Scottish-based, and it's not anti-anywhere else, but all it is just trying to say, use what you've got here and try and make that the focus of it, and then see what comes from that elsewhere. That's the...
I think that's really interesting, because I mean, kind of ties into what I was saying there. I've always had a bit of a standoffishness, as with I was saying there, with the same things I see in Scotland all the time, with it being, like I was touching on there, about like the poverty, the addiction to drugs and stuff like that. And, you know, I think River City there, as you're saying, is quite a good ground for other stories and stuff to be told. Is it going on to its 21st year now that you, the 21st year? So just to touch on saying about broader audiences and stuff like that, I did want to touch on this, especially because we're geekified and stuff. So I was looking in, I realised I've seen you speaking before about the 20th anniversary of not Geekified, sorry, River City. I know.
That'll be good. I hope I'm around for that. That'll be good.
That's it, we'll get you back for but no, it was the multiverse. The multiverse. That was so I was really interested in that. Unfortunately, I'll be honest with you, River City is not something I've been able to catch up with completely all the time.
That's fine,
but I was really I was trying to find this anniversary, because I was really interested in this, about the kind of multiversal thing you've brought into it, and characters coming back and all that. And you were speaking about it a bit before in another interview I was watching. But I was just kind of wondering where the idea where that stemmed from. Do you know what I mean? Where that came from in the writer's room to be like, you know what, multiverse. Let's make a River City.
So it's interesting, because obviously River City has a limited budget, right? And within that you've got to be imaginative about what you can do. So we were wanting to do something big for the 20th anniversary. BBC Scotland channel wanted us to do something big, but there was no more money to do something big. So we were talking about a kind of explosion-driven series of things, and we'd just done one not long before that. And then the thought was, I can do a bigger one than that. And I was like, well, what's the point of doing a bigger explosion than the last explosion? What else can we do? So basically we started thinking about, right, what if you've got 20 years as an achievement of any show? And if you're going, well, what have you got? What has that show got to show for that? And I realised, and then everybody realised, it's the history of the show that you've got. The people have been through the doors, the people have worked on it, the actors have been in it, the writers, the directors, particularly the crew, the people who have all put their heart and soul into it over a number of years. How can we capture that? And then started thinking, well, actually, the audience would probably like to see some of the people that they've loved in the past who are no longer in the show. And it started to come from that. I've got to be honest, that multiverse had to be explained to me, because I was like, what are you actually talking about?
Oh my God, we're in the multiverse.
And Kevin, who's the series producer, and Joanne, who's the script producer, and Sarah, who's the story producer, said, watch Spiderman.
That's a good way in,
which was a good way in. And I watched that and I was like, all right. And we started then talking about a multiverse way, and we talked about Lenny Murdoch's obviously quite an iconic character in River City, and there was talks about Lenny taking you through, but then we realised that'll be really heavily crime driven and quite serious. And we thought Bob and Angus. Bob has been there since day one. Stephen Purden, who's a smashing guy and a really good actor, and that made sense. Do it through him, and then that can bring you through, and that can bring in a multitude of other characters. So that is how it started. Then the reality of our situation would be, it was much more ambitious than what we ended up with, which I liked a lot. But we had more characters, and really we couldn't have them, not because we couldn't afford them, but because costume and makeup wouldn't be able to do them because they were like, well, how are we supposed to get all these folk through costume and makeup in the morning? But first, so it was a practical reason. And then we couldn't actually, because there's so much work in Scotland, we couldn't get other teams. We couldn't even get second teams and put them in portacams.
That's a great but bad thing. It's
because there's so much work, really. And so then we made do with what we had, which was good. And, you know, obviously, Johnny McKnight, who wrote it, I think Johnny's a force of nature as a writer. He's a really terrific writer. Ryan, who was the director of it, Ryan's also a really imaginative and good director, and those guys love River City. They really love it. So that episode shows that, I think. And the actors that were coming back, some of them had left River City 10 years before, some of them even more than that, were like, it was weird for them. They were in like that. Definitely. Here we are, we're back again. And, you know, so, and that's kind of how it happened was, and then obviously thinking of drinking if you could take a drink of something and then be thrown into people from the past and all that, and then wondering what is it that Bob wanted more than anything right from the very start of the character was having a son or a daughter, a child, and he wasn't able to have one, and eventually he did. So we knew that had to be the end of it. So with the end before we had the beginning, that Bob has to be reunited with his son, and that will be, you know, a Proclaimers moment. That's what was said. Let's make it a Proclaimers moment, and that's what we had. So
very nice.
So it was full of kind of nice things like that.
That's great. So you think there's any chance in the future then, if we've opened up to the multiverse, is there any chance that we might have Shell Suit Bob with superpowers or something like that at some point? Can he have like telekinesis?
See, with our recent past, I wouldn't put that past the Stuart. I've got to say.
I'd like to see that.
We just recently did a two-hander. And you know, the thing I like about this is the challenge that happens is that there was a director, Stuart Davids, who did Tinseltown. Stuart shot this episode in a day. It was like one day with two actors. So it was Raymond, Paul Sampson, who plays Raymond, and Rasheen, who's currently who's Joyce, who's currently in the show again. So it was her, and it was her being in, having this memory of him or dream of him that happened once a year since he's died, and it was about letting go, but it was also humorous and lovely. And what we did was we rehearsed it like a play, both actors, and we got footage from the past. So that's just recently been on that one, and again had a really big reception. So sometimes it's like you have to just push the envelope and be a bit imaginative with it and try other things out. I
think that's really cool, especially, I mean, it's just really exciting. It's really cool to hear that River City, you know, when it is doing that, pushing the boundary things and all that. Really like that. Do you know what I mean? Just another wee thing, because you've been on it for so long, from the kind of producing side, because you've been for this, that's going on 21 years. Have you seen with, you know, we're talking about there with the things about, you know, Marvel superheroes or even Netflix, the streaming services, has the producing side of it changed at all there, and like what you've in the kind of you've been through it?
It's changed in that the format of the programme has changed dramatically over the period. It started off as half-hour shows that were filmed all year round. Then it was half-hour shows that were filmed half the year round. So you did double banking, which means you've got two teams shooting at any one time. So at any time we're shooting in 2 weeks, there's 8 episodes getting shot. So the actors have to be across 8 episodes. You'll have one producer on a block of 4 and another producer on a block of 4. And they've got to be talking all the way through it. So it's like it's really planned into an inch of its life to do it that way. We moved to hours for many years because of scheduling issues that BBC Scotland had. So they wanted it to be an hour long. In my opinion, I wrote quite a lot of episodes at an hour. It never worked as well as it does in half an hour, because half an hour's a soap length, an hour long's like a drama length when you should have a big budget, you know. And so a lot of the time, I think we punched above our weight for some of them. Other times I felt as if we're padding here for 10 minutes because what else can you do in one street with all the same folk? So there's been different challenges with that. Now, I think as a producer on something like River City, it's about how you can get the material done in the time that you've got, still make it imaginative, try and make it look good. When we go back filming in August, we've slowed it down because we're doing training, and it means in the end there's less episodes. But what you can do with the episodes is go out on location for some of it, do stuff that we've not been doing for a long time, which I think will up the ante in terms of the quality of the show.
Yeah.
I think some constants are always there. You need to have good actors who can do a lot in one day. I recently did a very small bit as an actor again in a thing called Deadshot. It was Sky. It was an IRA thriller.
I actually got that down. I was going to actually bring that up.
Well, what I try to do with acting is keep my hand in every now and again, because
got my questions. that was genuinely going to be one of my questions. Was the fact that you've done so many different parts of like any sort of production, acting, writing. Right. How do you feel about? Like, obviously, I was going to talk about Deadshot. How do you feel about going back into the acting side?
Well, I did it. What happened was the casting director got in touch with me to say they can't quite find. Now we're talking about accents. I was like, all right there now, how about you and all that. Where do they get money for petrol and all that? That was Welsh. No, it wasn't really, no. But he said they can't find somebody for this part. It's only 2 or 3 scenes, and would you do a self-tape for it? And I was like, well, like, I'm an executive producer on a show, I'm really busy. But he went, listen, it'll be a complete whatever, it'll be a complete different thing. So I sent it in, I had a Zoom meeting with the 2 directors, and they offered me it. And then I just thought, why not? It's only going to be a couple of days. It will be a completely different experience from River City because it's quite a big budget. So on that first day, we did 1 scene, and that scene's about maybe less than 2 minutes. And they spent the whole day in that. Wow. We would be spent that like that. But that couldn't happen in River City. We're doing 13 to 18 pages a day. Each of those 2 teams. So that's a very, very different process. But it was just kind of nice to remind yourself what it's like. So I know that for actors yourselves, hitting the mark, saying your lines it's a lot easier said than done. Sometimes it's like hard. And I like to remind myself how hard other people's jobs are in the situation of something like River City.
It's a really cool way to look at it, man.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up. I was saying I've got a lot of respect for somebody who, the position that you're in is obviously, some people will spend their whole life just to get to the position that you're currently in. But the fact that you still touch into a wee bit of acting every so often.
The way I look on it is, when they fire me, I need to have all my options open, but also because I genuinely think actors don't retire. So the fact that you're older means you're old. You're now able to be cast in older parts. So I probably will continue that when I finish River City. I don't imagine myself going on to be an exec producer somewhere else, because that has been offered to me, and what it means is a total life-changing moving away from Scotland situation. And I'm not really interested in doing that.
Right.
I'm sort of tied here emotionally, culturally. And I feel that anything I want to do really comes from here. So what would be the point of going to Wales or London or whatever? So I don't see, after River City, after this, and they've been great with me on River City. I've written for River City. I acted in it. I've produced it. I've been a story advisor. I've done they've given me a lot of work over the years. And the good thing for me was, having a family. My oldest, my daughter, who's a script supervisor, is going to be 30 soon. And when she was born, my wife's obviously an actress, and I was an actor and writer. That was a wake-up call to me about, all right, I better get my arse in gear here, because how do you pay for it? And you can't be saying, I've got an audition coming in 2 weeks or whatever. So that was a massive change. And what it made me realise was, appreciate all the different jobs, try them, do them. You'll not be good at them all. You'll not find that you like them all. But the kind of job I'm doing now, I don't think I could have done 30 years ago. I wasn't ready. I knew quite a lot of what I know now, but I wasn't ready temperamentally. I think being an executive producer, even a series producer, was something that was better for me when I was older. I was quite fiery when I was younger. I'm not saying I'm not now, but I know how to not do it now. And because I've done all the other things, I know how to talk to people in almost all of the jobs and the crew and the cast. I mean, I really love the crew in River City. That art department, for example, are amazing. Anything you ask them to do with a very limited budget, they work miracles. It's like, honestly, and because I know the parameters of it, that's why I'm quite passionate with the people that work on it. I know what they do. So even though sometimes the show might not be everybody's cup of tea, or, there might be episodes that people don't like, I know what people have done to achieve them, and they're not always going to be brilliant, but some of them are. And the winning the RTS award, what was good about that was I'm not bothered about awards, but I am bothered from the point of view of a recognition for those guys. Yeah. That's how I feel about that.
I've known loads of people in the industry who've been in nearly every department of River City over the years, and every single person I know that has ever worked on River City said it's been a great experience.
Yeah, no,
you do hear negative things about some things, but every single person that I've ever known to go on said it's great.
Well, itself is a small thing for like extra walk on years ago. It's always been, you can see that kind of camaraderie. It's a kind of close knit thing. It's nice, and again, it's just fantastic to have that, especially in Scotland. Do you know what I mean? It really is to have that there.
Do you know one thing that is missing from River City, really, really missing, is merchandise. I'd love to have like a wee tote bag that says Shield in.
Do you know why that? I've always know why that is, right? It's a complicated. We get requests for that all the time. Yeah. Right. It's because we are the people who make River City as our BBC Studios. That's what's happened in the last few years. We are not BBC Scotland. So BBC Scotland commissioned the series,
right,
and we make it for BBC Studios. But the merchandising stuff would be with BBC Scotland. So it's who actually does, because it wouldn't be in our remit to do that. So even when we do when the tours happen at Shield Inch, usually during the summer, it's BBC Scotland that organise them. It's BBC Scotland people who are there and take them round, and we've got nothing to do with it. It's a separate kind of thing, and we've got a great relationship with BBC Scotland, but it's just that it's not ours in terms of how doing the merchandising, because I think it would be a good thing to do.
I've always said for years.
You probably got loads.
It'd be really funny, like having the subway stop with Shield Inch, and just having Americans really confused. Just try to get off Shield Inch.
I've been around 5 times now.
Yeah, I could see a lot of terrible stuff like that as well. Do you know what I mean? I will work on it. But no, I could see some people buying that merchandise. That'd be cool. That's something that never crossed my mind.
Bizarrely, there was the one thing that always pops up, because you always see bloody Coronation Street plaques and stuff like that, and I was like, oh, one for bloody River City.
Get some action figures as well if you're going for it.
No, we had one of the tours. It was just before COVID. We've not really had them since that. I think it's starting up again soon. This dad got in touch to say his boy, who at that time I think was 10, was obsessed with Lenny Murdoch, and he said all the kids in the area we stay and go out and play football and that, and he's out with his Lenny Murdoch suit on, pretending to be Lenny Murdoch. Right? So I was like, all right, okay. And he said, I'm going to bring him to do the tour, and it's just to let you know, is it okay if we get a photograph taken in the seat in the office, in Lenny's office in Amber Cabs? And I was like, aye. So I get in touch with Frank Gallagher, who plays Lenny Murdoch, and said, look, this wee boy is going to be here for this tour. And the way it works out, on a Saturday, if they're doing, I think there's 5 or 6 tours in a day, they go round, there's a whole thing, and then in the next batch come in, so we had to work out what batch it was going to be. And then when the wee boy was sitting in the chair getting his photo taken, Frank walked in as Lenny, and I went, get out of my seat. And wee guy was like, sorry Lenny, sorry. And then they got their photographs taken in it, but to see the joy in that wee boy's face, it was fantastic.
That's beautiful.
It was a lovely moment. And but then it caused chaos, because then all the other So there was like literally this woman who was about 50 went, "Hey man, I'll get in." It's Lenny will come to see me.
Did you expect that? That's going to be like an add-on in the next two?
No, I know.
Spent another 40 quid to have Lenny Murdoch trying to
That's beautiful. Really, that's a really touching story. That's something. As an actor myself, never been in anything like that, but I've always really loved the idea of getting to portray a character so much that people have a real love for it, and then getting to like stay in character around those people, get to play about them. Do you know what I mean? Getting to kind of bring that, especially to children. Do you know what I mean? That bring that thing from the screen right in front of them. So that
because I've known Frank since he was one of the guys I shared the flat with, Frank Gallagher. So
we'll call him Samuel L. Jackson. I don't even remember that, by the way. We go back a long way. I was the best man at his wedding and all that, and he's always been a really, really good actor. Did lots of different things, but he's now obviously known much more for that than anything else. But two different scenarios going out with him. One, we were out in this place where this woman comes up and goes, Lenny, my husband lost his job and he's been behaving like a knob ever since. Can you have a word with him? And Frank was like, look, I'm not Lenny. I'm Frank and I'm an actor. And she goes, no, I've got him on the phone. Right, so he went. So he took the phone and went, all right. And the guy went, Lenny, I'm sorry, Lenny. I'm going to screw the nut, right? I've been babying too much, you know that. I'm really sorry. And that genuinely happened. I was there and I saw that. The other one that happened was really at the end of a big celebration. I think it was somebody's birthday or something. At the end of the night, and a few drinks had been taken at this point, we were leaving and this guy went, oh, you can't leave. I've told my wife Lenny's here. And Frank and we were like, no, we need to go because we are half cut. And they were like, no, she's coming out fiscal bride. Oh God! And we were like, what? And so that literally 5 minutes later, this woman arrived with curlers on, dressing gown and slippers. To her pub, she went because Lenny was there to get a photograph taken with Lenny, and it's like, I mean, honestly, I've never seen anything like it for a character where people really go for it.
It's great though.
I work for an Italian restaurant, and obviously it's in Princess Square. I have to give it away which one I boxed myself. But he came in for dinner, and I mean, I've had like some of the Steve Aoki, famous DJ. He's been in. I've had some massive celebrities come in, and nobody's bothered. But Frank was in the restaurant, and I swear to God, everybody in the restaurant was like, it's Lenny. Everybody was like, is that Lenny? I was like, that's absolutely
nobody
hilarious.
calls him Frank. Everybody knows him as Lenny.
Just having that effect on people, it must be something though. But I mean, it is a bit mad to think how fully, functioning grown adults cannot understand that this is an actor.
Especially something must be the Scottish psyche, because I'm like, he is an out and out sociopath. Lenny's killed about at least 30 people that I know of. He buried his first wife in the boatyard, and she tried to kill him right enough, but as far as I know, she's still there. And you go, and that's the character who everybody relates to. But
it's that anti-hero thing, I think, man. Do you know what I mean? The bad guy.
Everyone loves a villain.
Aye.
Everybody loves a villain.
I think it's as well, we try to work it out because we get data given to us every few months about how the show's going, how characters are being received and all that. And I mean, it's overwhelmingly positive for Lenny, but we try to get to the bottom of why. And one of the reasons is the actor brings a humanity to the character. Because there's moments that can seem as if they're going to be quite cruel moments, and he does it in such a way, there's a dichotomy in him about doing it, and so he brings something else to it that's not necessarily always there on the page. That's interesting. It's how that actor, it's how he interprets that. He's like, he thinks all of these things none of them are easy for him to do. Why would he do it? It's not, getting rid of somebody's not an easy thing.
Yeah.
There's a storyline on at the moment where his wife has been the subject of a sexual assault, a rape, and it's been a long ongoing story. See honestly, the amount of letters like, Lenny, please kill him. That's what you get. Kill him, Lenny. It's like all right. Don't know why people let you mess with that audience.
People do like to see their justice happen in front of me. It can be very unsatisfying when you see something like that and then don't see the guy get the thing. So but I think there is something in that in people. Maybe it's a Scots thing as well, but I think there is something in that in people that really do like the bad guy, the guy that can get something done but have to have a conscience about it and all that kind of thing. And it really does come down to how it's played as well, because if it is portrayed as just bad guy for the sake of being bad, you tune out right away. Well, I do anyway when I see anything that's just, you know, that thin. But when you layer a performance on top of it with the guilt and the dichotomy of it, as you said, it puts people in the shoes, and they can realise, what would I do in this situation? Do you know what I mean? It's kind of thing, and I think that can bring a lot of people's dark bits to the surface. I mean, and that's why people kind of like that. I know why I like that.
He's an iconic character. That's an iconic character. And now we need to ask, obviously, like, is there any exclusives you can give us? A wee sneak peek into something that's coming without giving obviously what you're allowed to. We need to just something we can. A wee
take anything, any sliver.
A mere crumb, sir.
A mere crumb, sir.
Without getting yourself shot by Lenny.
There is a major character in the series that's shown at the moment. A major character will have his or her demise.
Oh, damn. That's actually
there you go.
That you heard it.
Exciting that. Getting that's an exclusive with Geekified.
Exclusive.
Thank you so much.
And thank you so much in general. I think are we over time?
We're perfectly on the
perfectly on time, just checking the time there. But it's been absolutely amazing speaking to you, Mark. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us, and you know, I wish you all the best with everything to come, and hope we can catch up sometime as well.
That's fine. No problem at all.
Thank you very much again. It's been an absolutely great experience. You can obviously catch River City. It's if this goes out internationally, which is absolutely huge. Please watch it, and then all the talent that he's had before. It's available in different places. You've got obviously Deadshot. When has that been out?
It's out just now on Sky. I mean, yeah, it's out in Sky.
There you go. So you got Deadshot on Sky. You can actually catch Martin there. But thank you very much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure having Martin here today.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for it's been a good laugh with you, man. We enjoyed it. Enjoyed the time. So thank you.
Catch you on the next episode. We can do this all day.
Much love.